back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys!
Hello.
So I am here today, joined with Steve, and we kind of forgot to update you guys on our final bit of this book Tempter's TBR.
Yeah.
We did finish late. Blame Steve.
Yeah, that's my fault.
I finished my books in time.
Yeah.
You didn't finish all yours in
No,
time.
it's
But
just
you
the
have
last
finished
one.
them all now.
Yeah.
And it was only one book that we were waiting on.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah,
Nearly.
we're slightly delayed. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll put our previous videos in this series down below. We've done 2 previous updates and the TBR. So this is our final update on the books that we had left outstanding. So
The finale.
Yeah, the finale. Final wrap up. I only have 2 books to talk about as I finished lots last time, but you have...
I had a bit of a backlog to get through in the last episode, so now I've got 5 to talk about today.
So this is mainly Steve's video, really.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's you're taking over.
I've got the spotlight here today.
Yeah, so let's get started. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I suppose I should start because I've got so many to talk about.
Yeah, I think so.
So the first book I need to talk about is the last part of the trilogy for the Three's Company prompt, and that is The Amber Spyglass in His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. And from my perspective, it was definitely the best of the trilogy. I found that a lot more of the wrapping up segments for all the characters and just the culmination of all the different plot points that had been introduced made it a lot more interesting for me as well.
Yeah.
And just the fact that everything came together, it was a bit more interesting in terms of the world and what was going on as well for me. So at the end of that, I rated it a 5 stars just because I found it that much more engaging and interesting compared to the first 2. It just got better and better as the trilogy went on. Loved it in the end. It was great.
So yeah, good news. So as a trilogy ender, do you think it was a good one?
Yeah.
Sometimes they're a bit of a flop, but I think His Dark Materials
This one was
wraps up
particularly
really
good.
nice. So. Excellent news.
Loved
So
it.
5-star read. Steve's actually had loads of 5 stars and like 4-star reads from this readathon so far. So you should do more readathons.
Yeah, probably. But I suppose most of those were recommended by you, so...
Yeah, well, obviously.
They are. So the second prompt I'm going to talk about is The Old Timer, and this is the book that had been on my shelf, or my TBR, the longest out of everything that I had, which is quite small compared to yours, really. But
well, it's growing.
Yeah, it's growing now after the live stream we did the other day. So now I'm going to talk about This Changes Everything, and this book is quite a heavy read because it's a non-fiction, it's very factual, it's got a lot of political talk in it, and sort of economics and business and climate change is the main topic and focus of it. So
did you learn anything from it?
I learnt a lot of things. There's a lot of things I felt at the end of the book which I wasn't comfortable with, in that it made you feel like, as an individual, yes, you can do lots of little things, but it made you feel like in the end you're going to be a bit powerless. So compared to the big corporations and how much weight they have and how much say they have in like global policy and all of that. But otherwise it was an interesting read, particularly at the moment with everything that was going on, because I read this a few months ago now, so with everything that was going on as well, it was quite a heavy read to go through at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I think it was a 3.5 just because the topic was interesting and engaging, but because it was such a heavy read and you couldn't really spend a long time reading it, so you had to pick it up and put it down a lot.
I think this is the one that slowed you down the most in this TBR, wasn't
Definitely,
it?
yeah.
So it's definitely not a light read for this time in our lives.
No.
But it's worth it if you're interested in political,
definitely interesting, and
change.
If you're interested in the topic, I would definitely recommend it. But for me, I prefer sort of lighter-hearted reads, so I think that's why I rated it how I did.
3.5 is not bad anyway. Yeah. So the first book that I am going to talk about is the Collector Prompt, which was an anthology or a collection of some kind. So for me, I did Ken Liu's Broken Stars, which is his second anthology after Invisible Planets. It's a collection of Chinese SF fiction, which is a range of different authors. I really enjoyed this collection. I think I slightly preferred the previous collection, but I still thought this was really, really solid and well worth reading, especially if Chinese SF is something you haven't read before, something that you're interested to kind of dip your toe in. It is quite a different kind of overall approach to science fiction writing compared to Western. I think I definitely felt like some of the stories I could connect with really well because the ideas were really fresh and interesting and different, but some of the stories I found were a little bit more difficult, and in fact I did end up DNFing one or two of them just because of the culture clashes, making it really hard for me to connect with or understand exactly what was going on. Some of the politics, like the Chinese politics that were woven in, went way over my head. I mean, I have a hard enough time with the UK politics, let alone Chinese politics, which is completely vastly different. So there were some kind of communication, cultural differences, which I think Ken Liu did a good job of trying to translate, but even then they were still a bit tricky. But on the whole, almost all of the stories in this were really, really strong, and I really enjoyed them. Some of the authors who I really enjoyed, the first Emperor's Games, which is by Ma Baiyong, The Robot Who Liked to Tell Tales, which was by Fei Dao, was also a really good one. Both of those got 4 stars. And Goodbye Melancholy, which is by Xia Jia, who I think is an author that I've read before in one of his other collections. So yeah, another one that got 4 stars. Quite a lot of the others got 3, 3.5, 4, something like that. 1 or 2 got 2, and as I say, 1 or 2 I DNF'd. But generally, it was a very strong collection, and the stories that were longer and took up more of the book tended to be the ones I enjoyed more, which is good. So 4 stars from me for that.
And my next book is also for the same prompt of The Collector, and I chose for this one The End, which was the last book to be published by Jurassic London, and this is the anthology of lots of their authors. It was an anthology of lots of their authors over the course of the time they'd been publishing works, and throughout this book and this collection, there were many stories which I really liked, and even though there was some that I liked less than others, I still found them interesting enough to read all the way through, and I didn't DNF any of them. I rated it 5 stars in the end just because of how interesting all the stories were and how different they were, because they were all unique in their own way. And there was a couple of stories which stood out to me, which were Martin Citywit by Adam Roberts, and also People, Places and Things by Den Patrick. Both of these stories were particularly interesting to me with the topics and the way they presented themselves. The story Martin Citywit is about how cities in this world have become sentient, so sentient AIs, and they have their own being and their own thoughts, and it's about the evolution of some cities and how they came to be their own identity, if you like. So and it follows one in particular over the course of the story, and it's particularly interesting how this idea has been taken into the story and just how it evolves in the writing. So yeah, I really like that one. And People, Places and Things is a story about how things just unhappen. So it's not just things just disappearing, it's disappearing from all traces of history. So anything related to something, someone, just gone, all trace, as if it never happened, and people can't remember it either. So it's quite scary in some aspects, but also interesting. So I really like that one as well.
So the next book that I'm going to talk about was for the newbie prompt. It was the newest one on my TBR at the time. Obviously that's drastically changed since then, but at the time it was this one, Mother of Demons, which is by David Hare. I didn't love this as much as I wanted to. I have enjoyed all of David Hare's books, but I think his first quartet, the Moontide Quartet, is a much stronger series overall than this quartet, the Sun Surge. And I think part of that comes down to the fact that this series just felt a bit not as well finished. I feel like there's a lot of things that kind of get a bit lost and a bit muddled in the middle of this series, and there's a lot of overshadowing. I talked about this in the last section of the video, I think, where the last book had like loads of unnecessary sex. This one kind of also had a bit of that, but also didn't feel like it wrapped up the whole quartet in a way that I wanted. If you look at the size of these books, they're massive. And so to have read 3 previous ones and then to read this one and then still kind of feel a little bit like disappointed at the end rather than really fulfilled was a bit of a letdown. So this book, it came together in the end. It did answer the questions that I had for the most part, but I don't think it was done that well, and therefore I gave it a 3, but it was almost a 2. Like, it was a bit borderline, and it was just the ending that kind of brought it up to that 3 stars. I was very much contemplating giving it 2. I still really like David Hare. I still think I'd read more books by him, but I'm quite relieved that this series is now wrapped up, and hopefully whatever he comes out with next will be something different, because I'm kind of, I wouldn't say I'm overseeing this world, but I feel like he's done what he can with this world now, and I'd like to see something new from him and something a bit different. So yeah, 3 stars, not my favourite, but I'm glad that I have completed the quartet.
So the next prompt that I had to do was broaden your horizons, and this prompt was looking at authors that are not English nationality, and I chose The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. And Marcus Zusak is an Australian writer of German origin, so that was my choice for this book. And this was a really interesting read, because just the perspective of Death's sort of narration of the whole events that went on made it a really sort of different take on a normal traditional story. And that was definitely an particularly for the scenario and where it was as well at the time. So Germany, 1939, also gives a very interesting sort of environment and what's going on. So overall, I really liked this and gave it a 4 stars, because it was just that interesting, and it was so different. It was a breath of fresh air, really, because of how unique it was and its storytelling style.
It's much more of a literary book, I would say, with like fantasy leanings. The fact that Death is narrating, it's not very fantasy at all, but it's definitely got a slight element of that.
Yeah.
And would you watch the film?
Probably.
I cried the whole way through the film.
Did you?
It's very emotional. It is an emotional story. You've got to admit
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I would watch the film as well then.
maybe we should do that.
Maybe.
But yeah, really cool book. I'm glad you read it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Definitely recommend that one. My final book was the random prompt.
Random.
Where it literally just said on the prompt that it's this shelf and this book across.
Yep.
So because we did the opposite shelves, because otherwise we would have ended up reading the same book, I ended up with The Gift of Rain by Tan Twan Eng. And
something you'd never have picked off my
I
shelf,
would have never
right?
picked this up myself, but I'm glad I did, because it was such an interesting, amazing story. I loved it throughout, and just the whole storytelling and the evolution of the characters and the relationship between Philip and Endo-san was just how that developed over the course of the book, and the challenges that they've both faced based on the changing events throughout the world. It's just such an interesting story. I absolutely loved it and gave it a 5 stars, because it was amazing, and I would definitely recommend this. Brilliant.
I need to read this one. I haven't actually read it. I've read his other book, The Garden of Evening Mists, which I think you should read.
Yeah, I might
judging
pick that
off how
up as
much
well
you
now.
like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't read this one yet, so I definitely want to. I remember loving his writing. I just thought it was so rich and like
there's just
so
so much
evocative.
detail as well, and it just it makes you picture things in your mind so clearly and easily. So
now that we've finished this challenge, we read 12 books in just over 12 weeks, because I think yours was about a week and a half late on the last one.
A little bit of wiggle room.
What was your favourite of the 12 books, and was it what you expected?
My favourite was definitely not what I expected it to be. There's a lot of strong contenders for the favourite in my selection, because so many of them are brilliant.
So many good ones.
Yeah, I had lots of good ones. My favourite was still The Gift of Rain, just because of how much I enjoyed it. I've already gushed about this book already with the previous comments. We don't need that again, but yeah, definitely my favourite. Yeah, pretty much.
Nice. I, on the other hand, did not have any 5 stars, I don't think. However, I did have some that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed Broken Stars, the collection by Ken Liu, and I also really enjoyed the Eli Mon Press stories by Rachel Aaron, and I will certainly be reading more by those authors for sure. I mean, they were already authors I liked. I would have liked to find some new authors, but I didn't read an awful lot of new authors in this, whereas you read almost exclusively completely new authors to you.
Mostly new authors, quite a few sort of second parts of the series as well, of series that had already started, so...
And what did you think of doing a readathon for this long?
I liked it. I liked the fact that it made me pick up books that I wouldn't normally pick up. Often with readathons, I tend to feel restricted by the themes. I often like to just walk up to a bookshelf, see what takes my fancy, and then just grab it and go, yeah, this is what I feel like reading. But I'm quite glad that it got me to pick something I wouldn't normally pick up, particularly with The Gift of Rain. So
lots of things.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for watching. We hope that you enjoyed this, and let us know if you've read any of these books, what you thought of them, especially the ones Steve read, which are really good. I'd highly recommend a lot of them. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and we will be back soon with another readathon TBR.
Quite likely.
No, definitely. Keep your eyes peeled for that.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Hi, guys. Oh, I hit myself.
Smooth.
It's been a while.
You ruined it all.
I think a cat hair stuck to my lipstick.
The cat's determined to get into the video one way or another. Right, and now I'm going to talk. Oh. If you get an itch, a tickle or something.
No, I think I definitely have a cat hair stuck to my lipstick and something was just tickling my nose.
Oh dear.
Okay, start over.
That's just thrown me off completely.
It's better to be loose. It's better not to be on.
Right. Okay. Need some deep breaths.
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.